Hello, I'm Peter Daltrey from Kaleidoscope and Fairfield Parlour. I'll give you a little bit of background to our album From Home to Home and then move on to what happened at the Isle of Wight Festival in 1970. not a very nice tale, I'm afraid. So around 1969, our record company Fontana were pressuring us to come up with a hit record. Even though we'd given them one in Jenny Artichoke, it was a silly pop song, but it was played all the time on the radio. But their distribution was really terrible, and the record was hardly ever in the shops. We were getting letters from people all around the country saying, "We love your record, Jenny Artichoke, but we can't buy it because it's never in the shops." So it wasn't our fault that we didn't have a hit record, and certainly later on in the story you'll find there was another one. At this time, we'd been working a lot of radio programmes, a lot of shows on BBC, and we met somebody called David Simons, who was a DJ at Radio 1. And at this time, he came up to us, he contacted us and said, "Let's have a chat." And he said, "I can see that you're not going anywhere. You know, your career is floundering. How about we get together?" He said, "I'm fed up just playing records all the time. I want to do something a bit more creative. And supposing we got together and, you know, start again. Let's start afresh. You start afresh. I'll do the same. We'll work together and see what happens. It's worth a try." So we agreed. We said, well, we've got nothing to lose. So we advised Fontana that we were going to leave. They weren't very happy about it, but they said, well, if you want to leave, you can leave. So Dave went round some other record companies without a lot of success, I think, at this time. I'm not sure how each episode of this came about, but eventually Fontana came back to us, or Philips, the parent company, came back to us and said, "Look, we're starting a new label called Vertigo, which is more of a progressive label," because the music was changing slightly at the time. We'd been lucky to be recording during 67, 68 when psychedelia was all in vogue. I'm not sure we were psychedelic, to be honest. I know people claim that Tangerine Dream is a very good psychedelic record, but I can't hear much psychedelia on there, apart from perhaps Dive Into Yesterday and music. But music was changing a bit, and our writing was changing as well. We were beginning to write songs that were a bit more mature. And Fontana or Philips said, "Well, why don't you come back to us, but we'll sign you to Vertigo, which is the more progressive label." And we decided, foolishly, that even though, you know, they'd let us down in the past with their distribution and everything else, that we would re-sign with Philips under the label Vertigo, which we did. But we signed on a different basis this time. When we were with Kaleidoscope in January 67, they presented us with a one-year recording contract, which we signed without reading. And then when they found that the recordings we were making at the time were very good, they signed us to a 5-year contract, and again we didn't read that either. But it turns out that when we signed those contracts, we were signing away total ownership of the Kaleidoscope material forever, in perpetuity, forever. This is why we're having so much trouble at the moment getting the material back for a definitive box set of everything we've ever recorded, but that's another story. So we re-signed with Vertigo, but on a different basis. Dave very shrewdly decided that we would do it on a tape lease deal, which means we would go away and record the material, and we would just lease the recordings to the record company. And that period was 5 years. So they would pay for the recordings, they would recoup their payment, but we would get the ownership of our material back after 5 years, which suited us. That was a perfect arrangement, and very good of Dave to do that. So we got together with Dave and we went straight into the studio. He said, "Well, come on, let's hear what songs you got." We played him some songs. He said, "Well, let's go in and do it." So we went to Sound Techniques in Chelsea. I think that's where we were for From Home to Home. We went to Sound Techniques with Jerry Boyce as the engineer, and we began recording what would become From Home to Home. We were employing different instrumentation in our recordings now. I was playing a bit of keyboard. I'm not really a keyboard player, but I could vamp out some chords and get away with it. But Steve was now playing flute, Dan was playing the marimba, and Ed was trying every stringed instrument under the sun, and the organ, things like that. So the new recordings do sound, different to Kaleidoscope. We were moving on. This was, like I say, a progressive period, so we were moving on from that. And there's some lovely little songs on there. I mean, the album opens with Aries, which is an autobiographical song about where I used to live when I was young in East London. You've got I can't remember the tracks on the album, but you've got Emily Brought Confetti, which was a big arrangement. I mean, that really was. We were doing all the backing vocals and trying to get a choral effect by us all singing on there. And then you've got a couple of songs over from when we were Kaleidoscope, In My Box, which I've hated for a long while, but relented when I was doing some live shows, because my manager said it's a great song, it's going to be a great song live, and we did it live and it was good. But as a recording back in the day, I wasn't keen on it. But my computer screen's gone down. Let's just turn that back on. So when we were just short of a couple of tracks for From Home to Home with new songs, we did look back at a couple of songs that we tried as Kaleidoscope but didn't work in the studio. That was Sunnyside Circus. I remember Sunnyside Circus and In My Box. And so we recorded those and put those on the album as well, although they're very clearly Kaleidoscope songs. But it doesn't matter because they came out well. I mean, Sunnyside Circus is a lovely little song, circus song. And then Dave was producing for the first time, so he was getting to grips with what he had to do, as we were with the new instrumentation. And we were all learning together, which was a very pleasant time. And when it came to mixing, I think we mixed at Olympic Studios in Barnes. And I do remember that Dave said, right, I've got all the mixes and we'll play the album through for you, right the way through from the start. And Dave liked to listen to everything quite loud. So I think that's the start of my ear damage, because it was very loud. But I do remember Emily Brought Confetti, when we listened to that, was absolutely awe-inspiring. I mean, the production values were great. The choral work we did on it was outstanding, even if I can say that myself. And so when we came out of that recording session, the listening session at Olympic, I did think we had a massive album on our hands. This was at last going to be a hit album. And we were, by this time, we were more interested in albums anyway than singles. We like singles, it's good to get your name out there on a single. But bands were beginning to think, actually, music is more about the album. It's more about the whole listening experience, which I agree with and still agree with, even today with my new albums. So yeah, that was put out, and we had to have a single at the time because a record companies all insisted on that. And Ed and I came up with a song called Bordeaux Rosé. Dave suggested an edit on the melody for the verses, which worked out well, and it was a great little song, really good little song, and that went out as the single. And like Jenny Artichoke, the radio stations couldn't get enough of it. They just kept playing and playing and playing it. But we'd completely made the wrong mistake by re-signing with Philips under the Vertigo label, because their distribution was just as bad And now we began getting letters from people saying, oh, Bordeaux Rosé, we love it, but we can't buy it. It's never in the shops. So we realised straight away that perhaps they still had distribution problems. At the same time all this was going on, Dave pulled off some major coups. One of them was to get us to write the music for a TV advert, which, you know, well, there's even more money now. There's a lot of money now in getting licensing your music for film and adverts. We didn't get a lot of money for this one, but we wrote the music and the silly little song for Fab Ice Creams, which was really good fun. I mean, it showed us that Dave was moving in a different direction. We'd never had a manager before. That was one of the biggest mistakes we ever made with Kaleidoscope, that we didn't have a manager. And I blame Dick Leahy, I blame the record company for not advising us, you must have a manager, you can't do this on your own, you've got to have a manager. But we didn't get one until Dave came along, and obviously that was the thing to do, because if you're dealing with a record company, you can't deal with them direct, the band and the record company. That's not the way to go. You need a manager in between you, negotiating for you on your behalf. So Dave at this point also came up with another major coup when he got us the contract to write the theme song and the film music for a film called Eyewitness, which starred Susan George and you see my memory's got big holes in it, but a lovely little film. So we wrote a song called Eyewitness, obviously to go with the film, and recorded that, and that's a great little song. I do love that. That should have gone out as a single really, but it didn't, which was a big mistake. That should have gone out as a single. So we did that, and then Ed wrote the music for the film. We also were working alongside Van der Graaf Generator, and they had some other music in the film as well. But that was fun, that was great, and going to Elstree and playing the music, looking at the film on the big screen and playing it along with the cues was great, and a good learning exercise. And we thought, well, Dave, can't do better than this, but of course he did. He came up with, incredibly, the organisers of the Isle of Wight Festival for August 1970 agreed that we would write the theme song for the festival, which had never been done before. I think Amazing Grace was the sort of theme song the year before, I'm not sure. But they said, yeah, write a proper song, a proper theme song for this year's festival. So Ed and I and the band, we'd never been to a music festival. There weren't many in those days, not like today. But we sat down and I thought about what a festival would be like. I didn't even know. I didn't even know what a festival would be like. But we came up with the song "Let the World Wash In," which I'm very proud of. It's a lovely little song, and it had to. The idea was that this song was going to be, this was part of the contract that we signed with the Falk brothers, that the song would be promoted endlessly at the festival. It would be played at least once between every act over the whole weekend, which hopefully people then would enjoy and like it, which is a great idea. It would also be sold on site, and it probably couldn't fail to be a hit record, let's face it. So we went away and recorded that. It was a lovely recording, and then shortly before the festival, Dave managed to get us on the bill. He said, okay, well look, the guys have recorded the song, but really they need a place on the bill. So the Falk brothers said, okay, well you can actually open the festival as the first band on Friday the 28th of August, I see on the poster. and you can go as first band on in the afternoon, which was brilliant. You know, although there were bands playing on the Thursday, I think it wasn't officially open. The official open day was Friday, and we were going to be the first band on, which would obviously attract a lot of attention. There was one problem, that a mistake that Dave made, really, that he decided that the Isle of Wight single, Let the World Wash In, would go out under a pseudonym. We would call ourselves I Love Wight, and then at the festival it would be revealed that the song was actually recorded by Fairfield Parlour, because I suppose he thought he was starting a bit of a buzz and that would be interesting, but it backfired a bit, to be honest. I think we all realise that now, because it would have been better to put it out as Fairfield Parlour and say, look, it's us, you know, this is our single. But anyway, that's the way that went. So there's a few reviews of the single here. Well, I'll read you this one. I'm not sure where this is from. Plugged to death. I Love Wight, Let the World Wash In. The official Isle of Wight Festival song, which I'm told will be plugged to death at the event. The lyric is descriptive, and as you might expect, there's a repetitive chorus in which the masses can join. Rippling guitars and tambourine are outstanding in the backing, and the beat is intensified by hand claps as the routine nears its climax. And then there's another one, not so good, I think, this one. The official theme from the Isle of Wight Festival by a British group who, for reasons best known to themselves, have chosen to adopt the pseudonym, though the song is published by Fairfield Parlour's Our Songs Limited. A gentle melodic harmony song with a strong repetitive chorus, in keeping with their last single, so they've worked out who it is. And attractive instrumental work. If through the festival it gets the exposure they are hoping for, it could well make the chart. Well, of course, it should have done. It should have done. And then there's another one here. Right. We'll see what happens. This is the official Isle of Wight Festival song, echoing the gentleness of Woodstock, but with something more tangible. It would be nice to hear countless billions on the island singing the chorus of this. If everyone there buys a copy as a memento of a memorable weekend, this should hold the charts for the next 10 years. Not sure who I Love Wight are, but they seem to be onto a good thing with this folky number, with its repetitive tune and everybody join in feel. Admittedly, it's not a very intricate song, but that would defeat the purpose. We'll see what happens to this after the weekend. And there was another one, and then there's just a report here of why it came about. The theme music for the Isle of Wight Pop Festival has been specially recorded by Philips and will be played non-stop between acts throughout the event. It is played by a group who will be appearing and will be identified at the festival, but is at present known simply as Wight. The theme song is called Let the World Wash In, and it is backed by Medieval Masquerade. The disc will be issued on August the 21st and will be widely available at the festival. And there's another funny one somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is now in my files, but I think that said it's got sing-along chorus, a bit like Boy Scouts singing or something. I don't know. It wasn't very good. So there we are. So now that we knew that we were going to be on the festival as first band on the Friday, we had to get an act together, a set that would suit. And we were given, I think it was 45 minutes, something like that. Your set will be 45 minutes. You must not run over. I mean, the very strict rules, you must not run over, because we don't want any bands running over. Well, we all know now what happens at festivals. Every band runs over, don't they? But as the first band on, we had to do you know, that was our set, 45 minutes. So Dave booked a pig farm in Surrey. we had to find somewhere to rehearse. So for some reason we ended up at a pig farm in Surrey. The point was, it was a brand new pig farm where the poor little souls hadn't even been locked up yet, headed for the slaughterhouse. But it was brand new. But I think it was a very hot summer. This would have been in June and July, I expect. And Dave booked it for a straight month or something like that. And we would go down to this pig farm in one of these long concrete huts, set up our gear and rehearse. And Dave had a stopwatch, and he would stand at the front and we would play. Right, play the set now. So we'd start at the beginning, get to the end, and he'd press his stopwatch and say, no, we've got to trim it down a bit. You've got to watch out for that because we mustn't go over. So we worked very, very hard, very sweaty old place we were in. And we got it down to the 45 minutes, which I think it was. So Isle of Wight Festival, we had to go there a couple of days before we were due on. And we stayed at the Clarendon Hotel, which I think was in Shanklin, and which was run by a guy with a very flowery name, Herbie Snowball. It's not a made-up name, Herbie Snowball. And we got on very well with Herbie, not very nice guy, like an old sea captain with a big beard. And we all got to enjoy our time down there with him. And we stayed there, and then we would wander off to the site occasionally, to watch what was going on, how they were building the site. Thursday probably went there and watched a few bands playing. On the day itself, the night before, on the Thursday night, we were in the Clarendon and watching television, and we were watching the BBC News. I mean, we weren't particularly watching it, but it came up, and there was a report on the BBC News, first report on, I think it was, that the IRA had announced that in protests against British troops still being in Northern Ireland, they were going to shoot the first band on at the Isle of Wight Festival on Friday. So I turned to Dave and I said, "Oh, Dave, Dave, who's the first band on Friday?" And he turned around and looked at me and he said, "Well, you are." So I doubt whether we got much sleep that night. So the following day we went to the campsite. It was beautiful weather, absolutely glorious, and a lovely setting. You could see the sea from the site, and it was filling up. I mean, there was tens of thousands of people there already. It was filling up. They had this really stupid area in the front of the stage which were for VIPs, which you don't get nowadays, but it was a huge area that was totally empty. There were no VIPs at all, but the tens of thousands were all confined beyond this stupid VIP fence, which was a real shame because you were really cut off from the audience. And of course that fence got broken down eventually, which was good on the crowd. So we kept peeping out at the crowd, and the nerves were coming up a little bit. There were huge tents out the back of the stage, which the artists could use as green rooms, changing. And we were around there, and some of the stars were walking by. I mean, I distinctly remember seeing Joan Baez walk around. She was really beautiful, really tanned. And as she walked by, she just gave us a little smile, which was really pleasant because I was obviously a fan of Dylan and Joan Baez. So it was getting nearer and nearer, and the nerves were rising and rising. And we went into our tent area and got changed. got our instruments and all had a bit of, you know, with Dave, had a big group hug before we went on and wished each other the best of luck. We had the set, we knew exactly what we were doing. It was going to be 45 minutes, so we were quite confident. So we walked to the foot of the stage and there were some steps leading up, and all of a sudden a film crew suddenly shoved cameras in our faces. You know, this, I think they were a French crew that were filming the whole festival, and they pushed their cameras into our faces, and at the same time this big burly bloke shouted down from the stage, "Oi, you lot, you've got 20 minutes, get up here and get on straight away." Well, of course, this was Ricky Farr, great big burly bully of a bloke, can't stand him. He because they were running late, not us, they were running late, he decided they were going to cut our set down to 20 minutes. This perfectly formed, perfectly timed 45-minute set of all our best songs, all combined in that set, were now going to have to be reduced to 20 minutes. So as we're walking up the steps to the stage, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, we're looking at each other and saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to cut it? We don't know what's 20 minutes. We can't work out from our songs what 20 minutes is. So that was a bad start. But of course, when we walked on stage and you could see the crowd, tens of thousands of people stretching right into the distance, and the breeze off of the sea and the sun, the feeling was just wonderful. I was ecstatic. But I say that, but of course a little thing at the back of my mind reminded me that the IRA were going to shoot me as we came on stage. So there we were, having the set cut in half, and with the threat of the IRA, and being the first band on at the Isle of Wight Festival. So you can imagine what the tension was like, what the adrenaline was like. I mean, it was gushing. It was a tsunami of adrenaline. But having said that, we launched into it and we did our very best. I can't remember how long we played. Nobody told us, but we assumed that, you know, we were at the end of the 20 minutes. And we came off, and we hadn't even been introduced. I mean, it was pathetic, some of the arrangements behind the scene. We hadn't even been introduced. So as we left the stage, I just said across the microphone, "Thank you all so much. We are Fairfield Parlour. Goodbye." You know, just to let them know who we were, because no one had told them. So we came off the stage. And we were quite pleased with our performance, but really deflated because we hadn't been able to do our full set. But we all said, "Oh, wait. Now they're going to play the record," because, you know, they had to play it between every act. They're going to play it now. And we listened, and yes, they were starting the record, and it just came on. I think it just got on into the first verse. And whoever was the DJ up there, some little bloke up there, he picked it up. I think it was him, or it was either him or big man Ricky Farr, look at me, picked it off the turntable and threw it into the crowd and said, "That's enough of that rubbish." Now, in the contract, we were contracted, and this said they're going to play the record between every act. Some of them said non-stop. I mean, I think the contract was to play it at least between every act, okay? So they played it up to the first verse, thrown it in the crowd and declared it as rubbish. Now, we were furious. Dave was, he went off like a volcano. What were we going to do about it? Well, Dave stormed down to the Falk Brothers offices, which were in the Isle of Wight, in the town somewhere, and I think we went along with him. He said, "No, we'll all go," and we stormed into the office. The office was in complete chaos. I mean, there was paper everywhere, people running around. They didn't seem to have a clue what they were doing, and Dave remonstrated with them. He yelled at them. There was a lot of shouting backwards and forwards. You know, "This is not what we were contracted for. How dare you do this to us? How dare you allow the DJ or Ricky Farr to, you know, declare this as rubbish when we're contracted to have this record played between every act. And they said, well, no, sorry, it was out of our hands. They shouldn't have done that, but we'll make it up to you. We'll make it up to you. And Dave said, well, how are you going to make it up to us? What are you going to do? So they were all running around like mad hatters. And someone, I don't know who it was, Ray Falk, someone I don't know, said, well, look, I'll tell you what, on Sunday evening, you can come back in between the major acts, not the band, because we won't be able to set your equipment up, but the singer and the guitarist can come up on stage and do an acoustic version of your song. And that will be on Sunday, the major evening between the major acts. And you can do that. Would that be acceptable? So Dave said, okay, if that's the best we can do, then we will do that. And they said, well, look, it's going to be the Sunday. It's the biggest day of the festival. So we said, okay. And then we walked away, and Ed and I looked at each other and thought, hang on a minute. There's just me and Ed going up on stage in front of, what by that time is going to be probably 250,000 people, singing and playing our song on our own. But we said, okay, if that's all you can offer us, then that's what we'll do. So we headed back to the Clarendon to Herbie Snowball, and we drowned our sorrows. But it was disappointing. I mean, we were pretty fed up, to be honest. But yeah, when it came to the Sunday, we were very good boys. We all went down to the foot of the stage. You couldn't hardly get to the stage now because the VIP area had disappeared. Everyone, the 250,000 crowd was pressed up against the stage, as we were as well. We worked our way in, Ed with his guitar and Dave leading the way, and we sat beneath the stage. We were right beneath the stage looking up at it. And all these mega stars and giants of music were all going through their acts. And the deal was that someone would give us the nod when we were ready to get up on stage. So we kept looking across at the compere, big man far, and whoever the DJ was, I don't remember. But we kept looking, and then the next act would go off. The crowd was roaring, and the noise and everything. It was lovely. It was evening. It was dusky, a rosy sky, and beautiful, warm, sultry weather. And we kept looking, and then another act would come on, and they'd go off. And we suddenly realised they're playing us along. They're not going to call us up. The people on stage in charge of the show had no intention whatsoever of calling us up on stage to let us play our song. They were the ones that had already said, oh, it's rubbish, and chucked it into the crowd. There was no way they were going to obey the Falk brothers and let us back on stage. And so, with our tail between their legs, we just exited and went back to the Clarendon. And that was the end of it. Over the years, we've realised that the deal that Dave did was with the Falk brothers who were running the show. And I don't know how involved Ricky Farr was in those negotiations. Perhaps he was on the sidelines. So when it came to playing the record, and this was the theme song, perhaps he didn't agree with that. Perhaps he felt left out. And his way of getting back at it, together with the DJ bloke, was to, belittle it and throw it into the crowd. So I think our band was caught out with some office politics. I think that's what happened. And of course, it was never played between acts. We walked round the showground on the Thursday, and I don't remember ever seeing a Philips stand there with, thousands of copies of the record ready to sell. So I don't think they've got their act together, which is no surprise. And we came home, and that was the end of our experience at the Isle of Wight Festival. So it's very sad because, I've done festivals since. I did the my memory is terrible, absolutely terrible. I did a big festival in America in 2013, and that brought me straight back. That made me think back to the Isle of Wight. But the difference was this one I went to and played at. We had a lovely evening, and we played a 1.5 hour set. It was absolutely wonderful. I can't think the name of the place. How ridiculous! And that was wonderful. So a completely different experience, and I was so pleased I did it. You know, it was. I was very old. It was only a few years. Well, I say it was 2013, so I was well into my 70s. But that was a wonderful experience, and a complete contrast to the debacle of the Isle of Wight Festival. So we came back from that, and we knew we needed a new single. The band were contracted to write some songs for a new edition of Lionel Bart's Things Ain't What They Used to Be, which is mad because Lionel Bart was an incredible songwriter. So why they needed any writing from us, I've no idea. But anyway, Ed and I wrote a song called Just Another Day, which was going to be for the new version of Things Ain't What They Used to Be, and we decided to record that as a second single, but it wasn't a great song, and that failed. But incredibly, David got us a support slot at the Royal Albert Hall, supporting. Oh God. Oh, that's the problem with age, you see. That is the problem. Oh, God. Fairport Convention. So we went there, and this was going to be, this was going to be fabulous, just like the Isle of Wight Festival. It's going to be fabulous. We're going to play at the Royal Albert Hall. It's going to be wonderful. We're supporting a big band, and there was a band below us. We were in the middle. We had a fabulous run through in the afternoon. David ordered a mountain of equipment and a big mixing desk, which we'd never used before, so perhaps that was a mistake. But the run through was perfect, and all the things were all plugged in nicely, everything was set up. We went off for a lovely meal down Kensington, came back, and we walked up the steps to go on the stage in the evening, and they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Fairfield Parlour." And we went on, and nothing worked. None of the microphones worked, none of the plug-ins for instruments worked. Someone, while we'd been out at a meal, had taken all the plugs out and put them all back in random places, which completely ruined our act, completely ruined our setup. I don't know who did it, I've no idea, but it wasn't us, because when we left it, we said, don't touch anything because it's perfect. And when we came back, we couldn't hear anything. So that was terrible, and then it's a long story, but after that, gradually, our career fell apart completely. We went away and recorded White-Faced Lady, which was a wonderful double album, but because of various other things that were happening, we lost our contract at Vertigo, because the boss man there was leaving and going to another company. We went to him to the other company, and he said, "No, I can't do it," and we fell apart, and the rest is history. But yeah, I'm afraid that's the speedy, rather short version of what happened to Fairfield Parlour after, they changed their name from Kaleidoscope, went to the Isle of Wight Festival, went to the Royal Albert Hall, and threw in the towel, I'm afraid. But look, I'm just pleased that people like yourselves are still interested in my old band. I'm still making music. I know Christopher is probably going to play you some of my own music at some time. And I thank him for doing that. And anyone who's bought my albums over the years, I mean, there's, I don't know, 22 or 23 or something of them, then I thank you very much. The music didn't stop when the band broke up. I've never stopped, and I won't stop. Well, I will. I will, of course, one day. We all will, won't we? But for now, I won't stop. I'm still recording. I've got another album coming out shortly, and one after that is already halfway through. I can't stop writing. I love music. I love the band. It's nice to have a nice legacy like Kaleidoscope and Fairfield Parlour. And I miss Ed and Steve terribly. I still see Dan occasionally. We still have a laugh. Dan's a wonderful guy. He's always upbeat, unlike me. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for following the band. And if Krista asks me, I'll come back again and tell you something else. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.